Nigel, have you won, Nigel? Nigel! Nigel? This is Lisa Forbes, the Labour candidate. Have you won, Lisa? Have you won, Lisa? Have you won? Have you won? Richard, what went wrong with the ground campaign?
Nothing went wrong with the ground campaign. We've had a fantastic campaign. You know, we've put the Conservatives into third, and we've got we've come within a few hundred votes of winning this from a standing start. You know, Labour have been here for 100 years, so it's a question of actually what went right for it. I'll tell you what, if we'd had another week, we'd have won this.
Why would that be?
Well, because we started 3.5 weeks ago. Think about it, 3.5 weeks ago. Labour have been here for decades and decades and decades. It's basic common sense. Another week, we'd have probably nicked it, but there we are. You know, congratulations to Labour, they've won, but I tell you what, everybody realises they've got to watch the Brexit Party. We're here and we're here to stay.
Let's talk now to Liberal Democrat MP, and she's also the Work and Pension spokeswoman, Christine Jardine, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Christine.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Again, a bit of a shock result for a lot of people in terms of that result in Peterborough last night. Many of the pollsters, many on the ground, and indeed certainly the bookies seemed to think it was a sure thing for a Brexit Party victory. But it wasn't. Labour Party came first. We saw the Brexit Party coming a very close second. Tories Party trailing a little bit behind. Liberal Democrats quite a long way behind them. I thought the lesson we learned from the European elections was the parties with the clear message on Brexit were going to do well. Why didn't the Lib Dems do better?
We did much better than we did with the general election, Julia. Our vote share was 4 times what it was at the general election. Now, in any other circumstances, you'd be saying, oh, wow, 4 times your vote share, that's a substantial increase. We're delighted with that this morning because that shows that we are continuing to grow and that people are looking to us as the party of Remain. We are still leading that campaign and that fight, as we have been for 3 years.
I suppose also if the lesson for the Labour leadership out of this is they can stay sitting on the fence in terms of trying to be all things to all men on Brexit and Remain, that works very well for the Liberal Democrats, doesn't it? Because I would have thought as soon as Jeremy Corbyn of the leadership did say, right, we're for a second referendum in which we would campaign for Remain, if they did do that, maybe they'll be pressured into that the Labour Party conference, as my guest Matt Pound suggested. If they did do that, that might see a collapse of Lib Dem votes, a lot of which appear to have come from the Labour Party.
I don't believe that. And also, I think the important thing that we should all be bearing in mind, Labour Party, Conservative Party, is what's best for the country, which is what we've been bearing in mind for 3 years. And the problem with the Labour Party sitting on the fence the way they have been is that people see that they're kind of going with the wind. They don't know what the best thing to do is. You know, sometimes they think it'd be a good idea to have a referendum, sometimes they don't. What they should be doing is seeing clearly the message that people want the opportunity to have a final say on what happens to the country, that where we go, whether we leave the European Union or not. And the Labour Party have to, for everybody's sake, stop sitting on the fence and actually come out and have a clear message. Because I think what we're seeing is that their voters are thoroughly fed up with not knowing what it is the Labour Party expect them to vote for.
And in terms of how this goes forward, we've got to have a new Tory leader in a matter of weeks. Theresa May is going to formally resign as Tory leader today. Expectation, again, I don't know why I keep talking about what we expect and what we predict is going to happen, because everyone seems to always get these things wrong. Seems to be that a strong Leaver will be winning that once it goes to the Tory party membership, 70% of whom voted Leave. Say it's Boris Johnson, say it's another Leaver. And if they talk about leaving on a no-deal basis plan, what is going to be the Lib Dem plan then? Because there's been some talk about proroguing Parliament, suspending sitting so MPs can't vote to revoke Article 50. Yeah. How far will you and your party in Parliament go to prevent us leaving the EU at the end of October?
Well, we will continue with the policy that was had since it was either 2 or 3 days after the referendum, which was give people the final say. Now, our new leader will be coming in, unlike the Conservative Party, whose new leader will be taking over a party in chaos and plummeting down the polls. Our new leader, whether it's Joe Swinson or Ed Davey, will be taking over a party that's got a clear, unambiguous message to the people, which is that we want this second referendum because we think the best thing to do is to stay within the European Union. That's always been the Liberal Democrat position, give people the final say. But we have also said the last time we were looking at the cliff edge, we said, if it gets to that point and there's no deal, then we have to revoke Article 50, because you cannot take the country off that cliff edge that even the government's own predictions are saying would be disastrous. And I think, the Tory party have to put on the brakes, look around them and see the damage that this ridiculous, reckless policy is having, not just for them, but more importantly for the country.
Well, yeah, some of us would just say that they don't agree with any of that, and there's nothing reckless about delivering on a democratic vote. But, I'm old-fashioned like that. Can I ask you, you've got the party leadership, the nominations closed for your party today, they're open for the Tories today, but of your party, Jo Swinson, Ed Davey, two who've declared. I don't think we're expecting anyone else to declare. They're clearly the front runners. But there had been some talk after the Change UK party, or whatever they're called this week, had sort of collapsed and split in half, that someone like, say, Chuka Umunna might find himself joining the Liberal Democrats. Would he make a good leader of the Lib Dems, do you think?
Well, I think we've got, at the moment, the best two candidates we could possibly have in Jo Swinson and Ed Davey. And, we are happy with that. If, Change have been through a difficult period, they went, leaving your political party that you've been in some cases for decades, is not easy. And after that, they had a disastrous European election. Things haven't gone the way they expected. So I think for each of them individually at the moment, they're just looking to decide what their future will be. From our point of view, if anybody wants to come and work with us, shares our ideals, our aims and our philosophies, then we're happy to have them. But, at the moment for Change, I think they're just looking for their own future.
Let's talk to Lord Andrew Adonis, former Labour Transport Secretary, joins us now. Good morning to you, Lord Adonis.
Good morning.
I was so looking forward to introducing you as a new Labour MEP, but it wasn't to be, was it?
No, it wasn't. But the reason why it wasn't is the reason why the Brexit Party lost last night too, which is that there's a determination to stop Brexit, and the way it expressed itself in the European elections, to my misfortune, but the way it expressed itself tactically was by voting Green and Lib Dem, because the voters wanted to go for parties that had no equivocation whatsoever about holding a referendum.
Yes,
to stop Brexit.
Apart from all the people who elected, they led those 29 Brexit Party MEPs, apart from all those people who perhaps didn't want to stop Brexit.
No, but the point about it is that they were outpolled by the parties.
Apart from the whole winning the European elections. Okay, if we're going, are we doing this interview in Narnia or in Alice Through the Wonderland, or should we do it in the 21st century in Britain?
You simply need to be able to do basic arithmetic.
Basic maths, yes.
If you do basic arithmetic, the parties that were in favour of Remain won the European election, and the key reason why Farage was defeated yesterday.
Well, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Then
people don't want Brexit.
Lord Adonis, 17,000 people voted for the Brexit Party, the Tory Party, and over 10,500 voted for Labour in Peterborough. So does that mean that the Labour Party lost the Peterborough by-election on your maths?
No, Labour won the Peterborough by-election. But the reason why it won was that the driving factor in Peterborough, as in the European elections, was an absolute determination to stop Farage and either a hard Brexit or any Brexit. But the problem is, because there is no, as you and I have discussed, there's no workable deal on the table. The only option which we're now heading to is hard Brexit. So the message of Peterborough is in fact the same as the European elections, which is that Farage can get 29, 30, 32% of the vote. I'm not gainsaying that. He can get.
All right. Now, can we come back to?
And he mobilises the great majority against him, and that's why Brexit is effectively.
Can we come back to reality? Okay, is not the lesson for the Labour Party from the Peterborough by-election and indeed the European election is that they're actually not quite sure whether Corbyn's fence sitting is a good thing or a bad thing, because if perhaps he'd come out for a second referendum ahead of the Peterborough by-election, he might have lost that seat. Many of those people who still gave their vote to Labour Party might have said, well, hold on a minute, you're not going to support Brexit, I'm not going to lend you my vote again. And the lesson that Jeremy Corbyn can say right now is that, everyone like you said, see, Labour does badly when we fence it, and he can now point to this victory in this Peterborough by-election, very difficult circumstances, surge from the Brexit Party, Party, a 60% Leave voting seat, a candidate who'd been ousted because she'd gone to jail for lying to the police. I mean, a candidate accused of anti-Semitism in Lisa Forbes. I mean, everything was against the Labour Party, and yet they still won, which suggests that, well, Jeremy Corbyn's fence-sitting policy, not supporting a second referendum, is actually the right policy, isn't it?
Well, you're absolutely correct that it's an enormous victory for Labour winning in Peterborough yesterday. I mean, there's no gainsaying that. It's a remarkable result. It's as significant as any by-election in the past. But if you look at the votes, it's very clear how we managed to do it, which is that we kept both the Lib Dem and the Green vote right down. And the critical thing is that Lib Dem and Green voters were prepared to trust us. And the two reasons why they were prepared to trust us is they absolutely did not want Farage, and they had sufficient confidence that we will stop Brexit. They're not totally happy. I mean, this has been a feature of the last month. They wish we were clearer, and they in particular want Jeremy Corbyn to be really out there saying second referendum and stop Brexit. But they have sufficient confidence that we will do so because we have always voted against Brexit in the House of Commons, and we voted twice now for a referendum. So I think the takeaway is very clear, which is that Labour's only way through this crisis is to be the lead anti-Brexit party. If we do that, we can mobilise, I would say, about two-thirds of the country against Farage and the right-wing extremists who have, of course, are in his party and have done a good job starting to take over.
The right-wing extremists. Why do you use the phrase extremists?
Because it's extreme policy seeking to take Britain out of the European Union and destroy our
an extreme policy to enact the democratic results of the biggest referendum we've ever held in this country, is endorsed by 17.4 million people and by 80% of voters at the last general election voting for Labour and the Tories, who promised to deliver that.
Yeah,
that's an extreme right-wing position. But
the key point, Julie, which you and I have gone round and round again, is that 3 years ago and in the general election, people did not vote to leave the customs union and the single market.
I can't do this again. I can't. Genuinely, Lord Adonis, I can't.
What they thought is that they could get all the benefits of leaving without any of the costs.
No, we were told. No, we were told by everybody it would all be terrible, and we'd be in a recession and lose lots of jobs. With all due respect, Lord Adonis, with all due respect, I don't think I or the people of this country, and certainly not my very, very just wearisome talk radio listener, I don't think we can do this every day for 3 years, for 3 long years, and still have this same argument again and again. So I'm going to leave it there. Anne Widdecombe is the new MEP for the southwest of England for the Brexit Party, former, of course, Conservative Party minister, and joins us now. Good morning to you, Anne.
Good morning to you, Julia.
Good morning. Now, I was expecting when we booked to speak to you that you'd be celebrating a Brexit Party victory. I think lots of people were expecting, as it was. Pipped at the post, got 30% of the vote. Labour managed 31%. What went wrong?
I don't think anything went wrong, but heavens above. I mean, when you're talking about an 8-week-old party coming within a few hundred votes of taking a by-election, I really don't think you're talking about things going wrong. But, I mean, for a couple of weeks, we have been saying that our single biggest weakness was that because we were so new, we simply didn't have the records, we didn't have the information that I assume both of the other major parties had. And so we were very much at a disadvantage. And indeed, Nigel Farage said to me 10 days ago, I said, we look as if we're doing very well in Peterborough. He actually said the problem will be the organisation on the day. They've got all the history, we haven't.
There has been a 48% turnout, very good turnout for a by-election, a very, very high turnout in postal ballots. There have been some question marks over some previous local elections in Peterborough over some sort of voter fraud allegations and convictions. Has there been some concern? I've seen some talk on social media that there are some concerns that police officers had to be posted at some polling stations and some concerns about voter fraud. Is that going to be something that the Brexit Party will look into, or is that just gossip?
I mean, I think as far as voter fraud goes, our systems have been getting laxer rather than tighter, and it is something that will have to be looked at, but from every party's point of view. Obviously, the whole point of elections in this country, in a long-established democracy, is that they should be free and fair, and they shouldn't be susceptible to that sort of operation. But that is something which you can only deal with specifically, and if there is a specific complaint, then that should be looked into.
Now, the message may well have been sent to the Conservative Party. We'll find out what Johnny Mercer thinks in a few moments. It seems to be that, if the Brexit vote is split between Brexit and the Tories, then the Labour Party win, a Corbyn government wins. The reality is, for you, as somebody who came from the Conservative Party but feels strongly about the need to deliver Brexit, that you and the Brexit Party doing well, if not well enough perhaps to win an election, we'll see what happens in polls and when a general election is held. But if it just is the case that you just prevent the Conservatives from getting in, you're just going to deliver a Corbyn government, in which case, is that what you really want to do?
Well, first of all, Julia, before you paint that rather gloomy picture, just look at what happened last night. Labour lost a vast share of their vote. Similarly, in both the Euro elections and in the council elections, it wasn't just one major party. It was both major parties losing votes to the Brexit Party. And that is what we've got to work on. We've got to make it clear to people that really we can win if you trust us with your vote. We came terribly close in Peterborough, and I think this is the beginning of something quite new. Peterborough isn't the end, it's the beginning.
But of course, outside of the European elections, when you can have just one policy, the Brexit Party wants to Brexit, you're going to have to actually come up with some actual concrete manifesto pledges on issues like health, like education, transport and the like. Yeah. Are you going to be able to agree on policies with other candidates like, say, Claire Fox? You come from very different ends of the political perspective. Are you going to all be able to agree on a similar economic policy, transport policy, health policy?
Yes. I think the interesting thing is this, that try very hard as your profession has, they haven't managed to get Brexit candidates to argue with each other. Something that I've noticed big time, having come from the Conservative Party, is that this party is very united around its aim and very disciplined in getting towards that aim. Now, we're only just starting policy formation. I'm not going to pretend to you we've got a full a manifesto or the equivalent thereof worked out. We haven't. But we are working on it, and whenever the general election is called, we will have those policies, and we will unite around them. We are discussing them now, and nobody is throwing things at each other. We're simply discussing.
Let's go better than the Labour Party then. Anne Widdecombe, thank you very much indeed, Brexit Party MEP for the southwest of England. Let's bring in Johnny Mercer. He's a Conservative MP, of course, a member of the Defence Select Committee as well. Good morning to you, Johnny.
Morning, Julia.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well. I'm doing a lot better than the Tories are today, coming third place in a by-election. It's a disaster, isn't it?
It's not good, but we live in extraordinary times. Any party that loses 25 points in a poll from its previous result is not going to win. It's very clear why we've lost those points. We have to dust ourselves down and get done what we all know that we need to do, and then we can progress.
So what is it you need to do then? What does the party need to do to win a lot of those? It does look from the polls that you lost an awful lot of your votes to the Brexit Party. What do you need to do?
Well, it's obvious. We have a totemic single policy to deliver Brexit, leave the European Union. We have not done that. We have failed in our singular issue. And yes, it talks about Brexit and so on, but it's more about the trust between those who vote for us and those who are elected. So it's no real surprise. It's disappointing because Paul Bristow is a brilliant candidate. I was up there with him. He's exactly the sort of man who should be a member of Parliament in the Conservative Party in London. But look, the tide is currently against us. It's entirely of our own making. The flip side of that is that we can do something about it, and I hope that transpires over the next 6 months.
Well, of course, the Tory leadership contest opens properly today, this evening after the Prime Minister resigns as Conservative Party leader. Who are you backing?
Well, it's very clear to me that the situation you've just outlined requires one individual who's going to go out and win in this country and beat Corbyn, beat Farage, and that's Boris Johnson. And we should pack in a good team around him to make sure he governs from the centre, he unites the party, and we can progress beyond Brexit. Once Brexit is done, into all those issues that are people's every day, certainly in communities like mine in Plymouth.
Do you think the Brexit Party, if Boris Johnson were leader, promised to deliver a no-deal Brexit by the 31st of October, do you think the Brexit Party would collapse? Would a lot of those voters end up supporting the Conservative Party? Could he bring them over? Or do you think they'll only come over once Brexit is delivered?
Well, it's a good question. I think people who are voting for the Brexit Party, they're not extremists. They're not. It's totally understandable that they're doing it. It's the fact is that we have had this singular totemic policy that we've been given a mandate to deliver on, and we haven't done so. So I can understand why people have. I don't agree with it, but I can understand why people have gone to the Brexit Party. I think if you fix that issue and you sort of bring the party back to being a sort of modern, forward-looking Conservative Party that has delivered on Brexit, and then starts challenging the reasons why people voted for Brexit, I think there is a really bright future there, because this country does not want to vote for Corbyn. The Brexit Party, impressive though it is, what unites that group of people other than Brexit is hard to tell. So there is a bright future. We've got to get through this leadership process as quickly as we can, get a good new administration into Number 10 into government, and then get on with what we should have been doing for the last couple of years.
But the Conservative Party's in a bit of a bind. MPs like you in a bit of a bind because the reality is none of you want to face a general election with that threat from the Brexit Party, threat from Labour. Again, Brexit Party don't need to win. They just need to stop the Tories from winning and bringing in Labour, and you lot are all out on your ear. But there'll be many who say, look, you can't go to a general election until you've delivered Brexit. But many would also say you can't deliver Brexit until you've had a general election. We've got 75% of MPs in the House of Commons who voted to remain. We've got threats from the Remain supporting parties, mainly Labour backbenchers, if not frontbenchers in some cases. Tory Remainers like Dominic Reeves saying that they would vote to revoke Article 50 rather than allow a no-deal Brexit on October the 31st. In that event, what happens then? Would you support the proroguing of Parliament? Would you risk a general election? And what would you stand on?
Look, I think the only real option that a new Prime Minister is going to have is to get some sort of change to what has been negotiated by this Prime Minister now.
But Juncker, Tusk and Barnier say that's not an option, not going to happen.
But the reality is that the personalities in Europe are going to change. The personalities in the European Commission are going to change. We'll have a new team out of Number 10. You'll have a new Prime Minister. And we have to find a way of uniting the party, the parliamentary party behind, what's a withdrawal agreement to get us out with a withdrawal agreement, but without taking no deal off the table, because the red line is Jeremy Corbyn into Number 10. And that will happen if we have not delivered by October the 31st. So I entirely support Boris's stance on this, which is, we are getting out whatever happens by the 31st. No reasonable person wants to leave without a deal, but also no reasonable person would take no deal off the table. And we have to find a policy way through that so that we can remain united as a Conservative Party of Parliament, deliver it, and then get on with all these other challenges that there's people's every day out in the country at the moment.
Let's speak to one of the new Brexit MEPs for the East Midlands, Annunziata Rees-Mogg. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
What went wrong?
I think it went brilliantly, actually. That we
really did you? Is coming second brilliant?
I'm not going to do a Remainer thing that we won when we didn't. We lost, but we had a standing start. We're a party that's only been going for 8 weeks. And to get 29% of the vote is quite extraordinary. To beat the Conservatives into third place in a seat they used to hold is equally extraordinary. I think there were huge advantages for the incumbents that had been there doing the work for so long. And we've got, obviously, lessons to learn, but we're very new and we're up for learning.
There seems to have been a little bit of a few crosswords last night about some of the actual campaign operations, people going out leafleting, a lot of people not understanding about they need to get the vote out, targeting key voters. We know there was a pretty high turnout. 48% is a pretty high turnout for a by-election, but very, very high turnout for postal ballots, which suggests that that's one of the reasons why the Labour vote and the Tory vote both was able to hold up rather more than many people expected.
And I think that's exactly the kind of lesson we will be looking to learn, that how important postal votes are. But I think the high turnout is a great demonstration of how people's interest in politics is growing, because the disillusionment with the two main parties, we've given those people a voice, and they're actually coming out to vote.
Oh, well, of course, I mean, as quite clear that your party leader, Nigel Farage, has led in previous incarnation as leader of UKIP. You don't necessarily need, as a Brexit party, to be winning elections, whether European, local or general elections. All you need to do is to stop one of the key parties from winning themselves. It's quite clear an awful lot of your votes came from the Conservative Party. It was their vote that went down rather than the Labour Party, in which case that would be a message that will be delivered certainly to the Conservative Central Office. We spoke to the party chairman, Brandon Lewis, a little bit earlier. In which case, does it matter whether you win or lose, in the sense that if you can actually show the Tories that basically, with us standing in the same elections as you, taking some of your Brexiteer vote, you're not going to win the next general election? In which case, will that be enough, do you think, to stimulate the Tories to elect a Brexiteer who's going to actually, I don't know, it's a mad idea, deliver Brexit?
It would be good if they did, but I think our politics is more broken than that. And the Brexit Party are not just about Brexit, but about restoring the trust in the whole of the political system that has been eroded by the parties going back on their manifestos, by a lot of incidents in the recent past, not least MPs going to prison. The failure of them to actually represent their voters is immense and is very worrying. That's what we've got to change, and we will fight on to make sure that we can get back to a real democracy.
Now, of course, the European elections, it's fine to have just one policy. We want Brexit. That makes sense. And the party was very clear that there was a specific reason for doing that. And as you say, only a few weeks old at that time. But going into a general election, which may happen any time, really, before 2022, even in 2022, you're going to need more than just one policy. And we spoke to Anne Widdecombe a little bit earlier in the show. She was very clear that everyone started having these discussions about what policy positions there would be for the Brexit Party. But do you think it's going to be pretty difficult for everyone to be united when you haven't just got one cause? You've all come to the party and joined this brand new party for one particular reason, to deliver Brexit. Unless or until that's delivered and the Brexit Party continues, you're going to have policies on issues like the NHS, like schools, like transport, lots of issues which are hugely party political already. You come from the Conservative Party, as does Anne Widdecombe. Other leading candidates, leading MPs, Claire Fox, come very much from the far left. How are you going to all agree on a way of coming together for a manifesto on anything other than Brexit?
I think our number one aim is democracy rather than Brexit anyway. Brexit is hugely important.
But what does that mean?
It means that you've got to have a greater power of recall of MPs so that they actually do what the people who put them there ask them to do. But it's much broader than that. But these policies are being formed. But we're going out to our supporters to see what the country wants. That's how democracy really should work. And we want that input. And we will represent what our voters have asked for. And it's not going to be a manifesto in the old sense where you can write it and you can ask people to vote on it and then you can ignore it. We'll actually do what we're asked to do.
Now, relations between you and other family members who are rather well known as well, Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, leading Conservative MP, seem to have been absolutely unstrained so far by the advent of the Brexit Party. Indeed, I've seen quite a few tweets from your brother Jacob Rees-Mogg being very supportive of you standing for the Brexit Party. That's all very well, isn't it, when you're trying to get Brexit delivered? If, however, the Brexit Party continues and actually stands in the general election and gets enough seats and enough votes that actually prevents the Conservative Party forming a government, and a Corbyn government is formed, whether with the help from the Lib Dems or the SNP or others, do you think family relations might be a little bit more strained?
I don't think this is particularly about the Conservatives. It's about representing people properly. And if you look at the Peterborough by-election, the Labour vote also fell by 17%. That it's both parties that are broken. This isn't a straight swap. We're not just taking Conservative voters. I've been campaigning in the European elections across the East Midlands in heartlands of Labour support. And we are getting huge numbers of votes there because Labour is just as broken as the Conservatives. And, of course, Jacob supports Brexit and understands why I am doing this, though he wishes I were in the Conservative Party fighting that corner. But I think most of us, it's probably true. Family comes first anyway, and our relationship, I'm sure, will be just fine.
OK, just finally, do you think if Nigel Farage had stood in Peterborough, you'd have had a better chance of winning?
I think Mike Green was an outstanding candidate, and one of the things that we are trying to change is people parachuting into constituencies they don't know, they've virtually never been to, trumping up some fake local credentials. That's not what it's about. It's about having people who really represent the area and fighting for the local communities. Okay. That's what Mike Green was doing. He did it exceptionally well. To get nearly a third of the vote from zero at the beginning of the campaign is a very great achievement.
Annunziata Rees-Mogg, thank you very much indeed. Do you think that you'd have a better chance if you'd stood as the candidate?
No.
60% leave voting, a time people are very angry about a Labour MP who's then become an independent after being convicted of lying to the police and turning up at the House of Commons wearing a tag. If you're not going to win in a seat like that, when are you going to win?
Well, the Leave vote is still very much in place. I mean, there's still a very clear majority for Leave in the constituency. It's just, as I say, quite a lot of Leave voters still voted Conservative, not understanding that the Conservative Party had no chance of winning. It was a two-horse race between us and the Labour Party. And I think as we get by-elections coming along, people will begin to understand that and start to vote tactically.
Well, this is the thing. The lesson may well be learned by the other parties. Actually, the Brexit Party, like what happened with UKIP before the mid-two-terms elections, that actually you don't need to win those elections to actually have an influence because, of course, you've proven that you can stop the Conservatives winning and could possibly put a Corbyn government in. Do you think that this will focus minds at Conservative Central Office this morning about who should get elected as the next Conservative leader?
I think it's the other way around, Julia. I mean, the national opinion polls out last night from YouGov showed the Brexit Party 6 points in the lead in the country. I mean, that's a stunning figure. And the truth of it is, it's the Conservative vote that stopped the Brexit Party beating Labour. It's that way round.
We spoke earlier to Sir John Curtis, the guru of all pollsters and psephologists, and he said we are now, he says the polls, the Peterborough results suggest the polls are right, and we are now very much in four-party politics. Message we had from Lord Andrew Adonis, though, who stood and failed to be a Labour MEP at the June elections, told me earlier on that the lesson of Peterborough, in his words, is that the majority don't want right-wing extremism and are now against Brexit. What do you say to that?
I'm not sure what planet he's on.